councillors and staff and one mayor. Let me tell you, today we have regrets from Mayor Kevin Davis. You probably all know that he's had surgery recently and he's at home recuperating. Hopefully he'll be back to join us on City Council next week and back with Social Services the month following. I'll remind you also that Councillor Weaver's off on extended medical leave, and although we miss Councillor Weaver, we're fortunate to have Councillor Vanderstel here in his place. Let me ask if the clerk has the roll.
Through the chair, roll call's been taken.
Thank you. And does anyone have a conflict of interest on any matter before us today? Okay, I see none. We don't have a presentation today. We don't have a delegation today. We do have a rather short agenda, and I'd like to call for a mover and seconder to place all items for consideration on the floor. Councillor Sluss, Councillor Vanderstel. We really shouldn't have to ask for separations. We'll just do them individually. Staff intend to make a brief presentation on 5.1. Okay, then we'll just we'll get to 5.1 now. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we're just, I was looking at, while I was reading through the report, I'm just wondering if they could talk a little bit about what they call security incidents. They said there were 6,264 security incidents for Marlene. But then I was reading a little bit further in Appendix D, and I don't think they're all, well, I don't know how you classify security incidents because they have bike storage listed as one of them. So I'm just wondering if somebody from staff could kind of speak to that. At first blush, it seems like a tremendous number for 6 months of the year for a 30-unit apartment, but maybe I'm missing something, or maybe it is as bad as it seems.
Good morning, Deb Schlichter, Acting Director of Housing and Homelessness, and through the chair. This report is a bit of a mix of an evaluation of a program and well as a business case for how to move forward in the next, after December contract period ends. The question you asked about security incidents, part of that is every time a security person on site has an interaction with a tenant, it's classified as an incident. You have to remember that the security people are there 24/7. There are a lot of interactions with tenants, so they call every interaction an incident. So if they're handing out a key, it's an incident. If they're checking the bike storage, it's an incident. So that's where you get that vast number of incidents, but you'll see how they're classified. They're classified as into certain categories of whether they're serious, very serious, or more around wellness category. So we tried to classify them as what kind of incidents they are. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, through Mr. Chair. Yeah, it does. Still seems to be maybe more incidents than there should be, but again, this is new to me, this whole housing development at Marlene now. So I am watching it carefully to see what lessons we can learn for the next one. So thank you for the answer.
Councillor Miller, thank you. And Councillor Antosky, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to ask for a brief overview. This is a really good report, and we've seen huge differences since staff have taken over this. I've been there. I've interacted with the residents, and we've invested a lot of money and time in this project, and I think it's a model that we want to look at going forward. So I would, and maybe I don't know if you want to get a couple of the questions out of the way first, but I think that it would be worthy to have a brief overview in terms of the wins with this and really where we need to focus our attention going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, I'm happy to give a bit of a brief overview. I think you will remember the early days of Marlene Avenue and some of the concerns that came out at that time, and the decision to make this a staff-operated program, City of Brantford staff operated program. That happened in January. And since then, we feel that there's a lot of good things that have been happening in the program. Not only have the concerns and incidents with our surrounding neighbors and complaints have reduced, but we see a well-functioning program where the tenants are finding their opportunities to make changes in their lives and are progressing very well. So there's a lot of good things that are happening on the ground with the program. It is our first year of operation. So the staff are also learning how to operate supportive housing, which is new to City of Brantford. So there's a lot of new things to encounter, but we have a really solid staff team and really good engagement with the tenants. And that's why we're seeing that progress that you've seen in the report. That the question, I guess, that is this report is bringing forward is that we were only given the opportunity to operate it for 12 months of this year, with the question of what is the future plan. We have contracted out the youth component to St. Leonard's Community Services as a specialist in youth provisions. So it's really the adult programs at both Marlene Avenue and Winston Court that the city staff are operating directly. I hope that helps to give a bit of an overview.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, if I may, Chair. Do I have time?
Councillor Antosky, it is your 4 minutes to spend as you wish, as we discussed last night.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up. I know that one of the transition, or I believe one of the transition periods we have is if someone is very successful at Marlene and they transfer out, they transfer to Winston Court. So I've had my concerns about that just because of past knowledge and past experiences. So what are we doing to ensure that there's not a backslide? How are we adding those supportive services to Winston Court so that we don't lose what we gained from Marlene?
Through the chair, there is a staff person with the Live Well program at Winston Court to provide services to folks that are moving over from the Live Well program and who were currently there that had higher support needs. We have a very robust transition process of how a person moves from Marlene to Winston Court. So part of it is seeing the progress that they're making using that SPDAT score. The SPDAT score tells us their level of acuity, and when they're really high level of acuity, they're really appropriate for Marlene Avenue with the 24/7 staffing support. However, if they're progressing well and they have lowered their acuity score, that would make them more eligible for that transition to Winston Court. There is a limited number.
Sorry. That's the end of the 4 minute time. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Vanderstel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you started your buzzer?
I'm sorry, are you seeing buzzards? Is that what you said?
Sorry, it's a spillover from last night's conversation. Deb, thank you for your brief description here. I'm looking at the comparative results of your SPDAT survey, your 3-month surveys, and you are talking about it not being conclusive as of yet. There hasn't been enough. But when I actually have a good look at the data there, points of contact, answers to the questions, have there been any identifiable changes that staff have seen or you have seen as a result of these, I would say, significant changes in the responses? Have we seen less incidents? Have we seen less incidents? And I should refer to incidents as rather negative incidents, not just an interaction, either inside the home, outside of the home, or with the neighbors that would correspond with the change in how these questions were answered.
through the chair, the SPDAT score only really reflects a person's individual acuity. The best measure for how tenants are doing in the program is through that self-report exercise that we did, where people did a bit of reflection on when they came to the program and where they are now in terms of their own wellness journey. And the security incident reports that the serious incidents, the very serious ones, are lower. So those two pieces tell us that the tenants are progressing. These journeys can take a long time. Not everybody, you don't see change in a small period of time. You have to look over the long period, but we're already starting to see those changes where people are saying, I have more control now over my anger issues. I've now got some other options of how I can interact with others, where we're seeing some personal changes on how they work with each other.
Okay, so you are seeing identifiably behavioral changes that have been occurring over the course of this data collection period.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, wonderful. So if we extend this and we turn this into a transitional, or it remains a transitional program, with the intent of having people work through supportive housing programs like this and moving to other locations, do we have the connectivity? You said we have some staff at Wesley as well. Is it our intention to make sure that there's some continuity in the relationships that are built, so that when a person leaves a certain organization, part of this support structure, and moves on to the next step of independence, do we have that connectivity, or are they introducing themselves to a whole new subset of staff and support mechanisms?
Through the chair, there is a transition period where that soft, warm handover would take place. So the coordinators within the Live Well Adult program will help to be available with that person as they transition for probably a period of 3 months as they do that warm transfer, because those relationships are really important. And so it's really difficult to just start cold with a new person. That will help to make that process a lot better.
Thank you, Councillor. That's time.
Okay.
Councillor Ferrier, go ahead. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I'll talk fast. I'm going to put my social work hat on and gush for a little bit. This is really, really impressive, the report and the results from the report. When I look at the self-reporting piece, the before baseline reporting and the after, and maybe just to put a little bit of a human face on it for anybody who may be watching or reporting on this later, when you look at the answers beforehand about optimism, physical safety, emotional safety, connection to community, and then after, the responses from the participants is amazing. And when you're looking at folks who deal with concurrent disorders, with addiction, with trauma, to see that kind of result in a short period of time is incredible. And a lot of agencies that have been doing this for a long time would be very jealous of those results. I guess my question is, when I'm looking at the age group, a lot of supportive housing in Ontario clusters age groups together into housing in such a way that it can leave huge gaps in the community, right? Because they look only at a certain group of people, and they often end up missing the folks who are 26 to 41. And that's actually you have a nice spread of folks from 18 to 50 plus. Now there can be issues around some of the services that are offered, but I think it's really impressive. And again, I think something that should be highlighted, just again, reading it as with the social worker hat on. One thing I want to know though is it possible, because I think this is a really important stat, and I think it's a really important stat for defending a program like this, especially if the city wants to continue to do more of this and look at it as a model. I think it's a really good statistics here, but is there a way to keep ongoing statistics of the housing status before Live Well in perpetuity? Like, I think a running tally for this committee and for funders in the future about exactly how many people over the course of the history of this program have gone from unsheltered, emergency shelters, couch surfing, transitional housing, precarious housing. Really only one in the public system out of all of those respondents. So this is taking, as you've said many times beforehand, the most the most unsheltered and most vulnerable in terms of housing and putting them in a much better place. And you can see that from self-reporting. But is that possible to have like a running tally of the housing status before?
Through the chair, yes. We have people now working through the HIFAS system. So the HIFAS system is the program that we're using with all our shelters in support of housing. And we do now require applicants who are wanting to go to the Live Well program to also voluntarily join the HIFAS program. And most people are willing to do that. That allows us to see their history and where they are coming from and where they've been over the last period of time. So we will be able to report that now that we have people on that system.
And would you be able to report that, to this committee and to the public more broadly? I think, again, I just would pick out that stat because I think it's important, because people say, what are you doing about all these homeless folks? And what are you doing about all these? And really, they're folks who are unhoused, and you're housing them and providing them with a lot of service that is showing results. So again, I think that number is going to be really important, and any way to report that publicly would probably be to the benefit of the community.
We can include that in our Q4 report. Our Q4 report can include that.
Yeah, I'm done gushing. Thank you.
That was excellent gushing, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Slesh, you're next. Sir, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick one. Deb, anecdotally to me, the homeless presence downtown appears to have subsided somewhat. It's not what it was earlier in the season. And can you correlate Marlene Ave to the difference we're starting to see downtown? Like, is it starting to have a positive effect in the, I guess, in the visible homeless that we get constant complaints and calls about, the grocery carts and the like going around? That seems to have started to subside. And I just wonder if there's a direct correlation between the two.
I certainly have some comments, and I'll let Marlene add as well. But it's a system approach to the issues. We have a number of players within the system. So some of the things we've added some extra services to. So from our outreach program, we have more outreach workers working later hours, extended hours now. We just started on the weekend and later in the evening. So our outreach program is well coordinated with some extra services like the BDOT program and with our own city bylaws folks. We've been really coordinating these efforts to help connect people to services. So we're starting to maybe see some of that, but there's also the downtown task force, and Marlene can add more to that.
Thank you. Through the chair, Marlene Miranda, General Manager, Community Services and Social Development. I think Deb articulated most of what I was going to say. I'll just add that there's been a very targeted approach and coordinated approach through the task force and the working groups and all of our service providers to really support this population. And I would say that having somewhere for them to go, such as Marlene Ave, is a true benefit. And we've seen great success, as you can see through the report. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you very much. Any other first-time speakers before I return to Councillor Vanderstoel for number 2? Go ahead, Councillor Vanderstoel.
Sorry about my massive finger. Deb or Marlene, I guess you may be able to guess where my next question is going. How many positions like this are we obligated in a community of 150,000 Brantford Brant, obligated to provide for these 12 different populations? Are we ahead of other municipalities of our size? Are we behind? How do we get a sense, either from the province or the federal government, of what we are obligated to provide? How do we find that number? How do we land somewhere so we're not providing the gold standard of treatment and care in Brantford, and other municipalities are not in that position?
Through the chair, I would say that in comparison to other communities in Ontario, we're probably above average. We're probably not necessarily the gold standard. We provide a good range of services. We have a lot of good partners that participate in the system. It's a system approach. We have a really good. We're on the leading edge of many of the best practices of homelessness service provision in terms of having that by name list that we're having in place, and using SPDAT acuity scores to help place people that are the most vulnerable. So we're doing well in comparison, but there's still lots of improvements we can make. But it's definitely, there is no, when we look at attracting people from other communities to our community, we've seen from the PIT count report that that's less than 10%. That's really a low number. So it's not bringing people in, but it's providing good essential services to people that are here in our community.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I look forward to retaining that level of service. I mean, my goodness, we have, not to gush, but we have come so far from where we were. All you have to do is walk through the neighborhood there and ask people how they feel about that organization now and the changes that we have brought, your staff have brought, you have brought. And I want to thank you for those demonstrable changes. It's enheartening to know that we can look after all populations in an area like that, regardless of their need. And I appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Rantosky, second time. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up to Councillor Vanderstelt's question to Deb. Deb, I think we need clarification on what are we obligated to provide, because it's my understanding as a municipality, there is no obligation at all. What you do is, you take care of your citizens, but can we have clarity on that in terms of obligation?
Yes, through the chair, our obligation is as a service manager for housing and homelessness. And so that obligation is that we participate in planning for the system. We participate in making sure that funding comes through us and is allocated out to providers to provide essential services. And we are obligated under legislation to manage those fundings and report those fundings. But we are the system provider and overseer. That's our obligation as a designated service manager.
So for instance, are we obligated to have shelter beds?
That's part of our service manager hat for homelessness, is to ensure that there's shelter programs in place for people who are homeless.
Okay, great. I'm really happy with what we're seeing here, and it's a positive direction. So thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that, Deb.
Councillor, thank you. If I may, well, it's in my mind. Deb, I believe the question was, are we obligated to provide that? And I'm not sure that we got an answer to that. Could you clarify, please?
Yes, we're obligated as service manager to make sure these programs are in place. We don't have to provide them ourselves, but we have to make sure that these programs are in place.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Bell, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Deb. Perhaps it's the reverse of the question that Councillor Vanderstelt asked. So it's not about obligation. It's rather more, to what degree are we covering the challenges that we face in Brantford Brant? It's good that we're doing what we are doing. I can only echo what Mark Leferrier said, but are there more people that we can be helping, and how many more people can we help, and what's the gap that's there?
Through the chair, there is always more work to do. This is an area that is unfortunately a bit of a growth industry due to other issues that are happening around us. We are looking at a system approach to things. So where we identify gaps, we're looking at ways to find the right kind of programs to address those needs. But we continuously do that. That's part of our continuous planning, is always to keep reviewing what we have in place. Where are the new needs showing up? Where are the gaps showing up? And how do we make sure that any funding that we are able to receive, we can pinpoint to the right places.
Thank you for that, Deb. To be more specific, through the chair, if I may, can you put a number on the number of people that we still need to reach out to and would benefit from this program?
Yes, through the chair, we have done that point in time count. We know there are still people that are in our shelter system who are looking for more permanent housing options. We know there's people on the street who are looking for housing that has the right supports in place. So those numbers from the PIT count are the numbers that we would be using to make sure the programs are in place.
Thank you again, Deb. Maybe you're reluctant to answer my question with numbers. Maybe you could tell me offline. Thank you.
Councillor Bell, thank you. A couple of questions from the chair. Deb, is it our intention as a service provider to keep this work in-house permanently? I'm talking about the 2 adult programs.
Through you, this is a conversation that I believe council needs to wrestle with. Is this a program? No? Well, we have our opinions, but they are vast and varied. We really need direction from council to know whether you feel this is a program to continue as a city-run program, or whether you feel philosophically it should be something contracted out.
Okay, so staff may hold opinions which you're not going to share with us online. Thank you. That's a very, very honest response. Have we reached the point now where we could hand this off to a third-party provider, a qualified, competent third-party provider?
Through you, there are a number of competent service providers out there that would be interested in operating this program. We've had conversations with a couple of them. We do know others could run a similar type of program. They have the experience in doing that, so that is an option. Okay. Yes.
So by committing for an additional set period of 1 year, does that transition municipal staff from contract staff to full-time permanent staff?
No, they would continue as extended contract staff.
Okay. And is staff in a position now where they could begin to work upon a public offering to put this service on the street for bidders?
If that's the direction of council and committee?
I'm just asking because I don't have any issue personally with us doing this for another year, but I think at the end of that time we should be prepared to perhaps go to the street and hand this off to a third party. What would the prep time be in terms of producing a document that would be bid ready, Deb?
I would estimate we need at least 3 months to go through a process. Okay. Where we can pull together a bid document, have it out posted, and then doing the interviewing review of those submissions.
So, thank you for that. So as part of our discussion around this, maybe not today, maybe at council, I just wonder if it might be appropriate to give direction to staff to prepare that document to be ready to go to the street in time enough for somebody to take the handoff on this at the end of the 1 year period. Is that a reasonable type of thing to suggest?
Oh, through you, Chair. I would suggest that even if it is the desire of committee and council to move forward with an external provider, there would be time required to obviously prepare the bid document. And then we would likely need to extend even the current staff as we need a transition period. So along with issuing the RFP, we need transition period. So respectfully, I think staff would recommend that if that is the desire, that we still extend the current agreement for at least another 3 months into March. So it gives staff enough time to bid and to have a safe and warm transition moving forward. I will say, if I may, if you'll indulge me, that the reason that staff brought this report or this recommendation forward was to really have a wholesome evaluation. I mean, I think we're confident that the program is required and we're doing a great job. It's just the question of whether it stays in-house or goes externally. That additional extension of 1 year would give the staff the opportunity to work through the program, hopefully outside of the pandemic and all the ramifications that that brings to the table as well, work with our security teams and the other coordinated efforts that are going. And collectively with that, we would bring back a strong recommendation in a year's time. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair's speaking time is elapsed. Is there anything further on this item, folks? Okay, seeing nothing further, we will go to the question.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Item 5.1 carries unanimously.
Are there any, sorry, we're moving on to 6.1 now. On the minutes, are there any errors or omissions to report, guys? Seeing none, we'll go to the question on that as well. Mr. Clerk.
All those in favor, please raise your hands. Item 6.1.1 carries.
We have no resolutions. We have no notices of motion that I'm aware of. We now will enter into our question period, and I will say for the benefit of our county counterparts here that the City of Brantford has conducted a review of procedures. And last night at committee, we approved the elimination of questions from all agendas. And as the service provider, the City of Brantford procedural rules do apply to this committee. So I would suggest if county councillors feel strongly about the retention of questions, that you perhaps provide correspondence to the city clerk or perhaps appear as a delegation at our council meeting later this month where this will otherwise be ratified. Okay. Does anyone have a question to pose to staff? Councillor Bell, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have two questions. One relates to 177 Colborne Street, and I would appreciate if staff could give me an update on that. And after that, I can ask my second question.
Through the chair, 177 Colborne, we are in a process of asking for an extension to the time frame for the funder. And we have submitted a business case and we're waiting to hear back. That will help us know if this site is still viable.
A follow, if I may, Mr. Chair. Do we have any update on alternative sites, either in the city or the county?
So through the chair, Marlene Miranda, at this point in time, that information is still part of a confidential memo. So we would ask that we either go in closed session if that's agreeable with the chair, or the clerk provide guidance on that. I will say that staff is preparing a full report and we'll bring that report forward hopefully in November to be able to answer all the questions.
That's satisfactory to me, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My second question, if I may.
I believe that's your third.
I'm not counting. There's been some documentation or some correspondence around an indigent funeral. And in that correspondence, there was a comment made that the city has freedom to accommodate excursions from the policy. Could you say more? We don't need to be specific about the individuals, of course, but can I get reassurance that the city is looking to accommodate the wishes of that particular individual?
Councillor Bell, this concerns an identifiable individual which was named within correspondence. So I'm going to say that we'll provide an answer to that, maybe on yellow paper. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify your statement earlier, we also applied the same changes to committee where questions are no longer asked at the end of that committee either. Just wanted to be clear about that. It wasn't just only applied to this setting, but also finance as well.
Did you have a question, Councillor?
Are you aware that we made those changes?
Thank you, Councillor Vanderstel. Anything else, guys? Okay, so seeing no further business before the committee, I'll thank members and staff for being present today. And for those of you watching at home, you're watching this long after it's already happened because we are not live. Good morning, folks, and we'll see you next month.
Have a good day.